So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining on what was short notice, but the ever-moving political landscape demands these things sometimes. So Richard and I are here this afternoon to basically give a steer on signals, look at direction of travel, and translate what the latest sort of political movements and announcements, Andy's speech yesterday, all mean in the circular of land planning, infrastructure delivery, cost and viability circles. So the title of this webinar is New Leadership, New Landscape. And I suppose that's the point. The political change doesn't rewrite the development market overnight, of course, but what it's going to do is change confidence. Funding priorities may shift. Local authority behaviours and developer sentiment might change quite quickly from today onwards. So in sort of practical terms, what does that mean? What does the conversation entail? So it's what are the signals? What have Richard and I seen so far? What do we feel might change as a result of the announcements in the last week? And perhaps most importantly, what should developers, landowners and investors start to do now?
Yeah, and I think it's important we also keep the focus on site delivery, Lee. So again, Brookbanks works across development sites from early strategy and acquisition stage through technical due diligence, through engineering costs and into delivering on site. So our question really is not just what the politics say, but what it means in reality on these sites.
Absolutely. Okay, let's introduce ourselves then before we move on any further. So Richard, if you can kick us off, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Richard Moorcroft, Chief Technical Officer at Brookbanks. So again, 21-year career now as a civil engineer.
Thank you, Richard. I'm Lee Witts, a Group Director here at Brookbanks, 28 years now in private consultancy. I've been at Brookbanks for the last 12. And Richard, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I did a bit of rolling the clock back, and I think both of our working tenures started in the reign of Tony Blair. So we're 8 prime ministers in at the moment. I think Mr. Burnham is more than likely to shape up to be number 9. So yeah, it's been quite a lot of movement in that time. So what we'll be discussing today, covering the political shift as best as we can from our corner of the world, how we see it from an industry point of view. It's not politics for politics' sake, I suppose. What we're interested in is what it means for development, real development decisions. So in the next 30 minutes or so, covering does this change the way sites are promoted as we see it? Does it change which schemes become attractive? Does it change the technical and commercial evidence needed to unlock consents? Does it create a better window for delivery? Or are we just walking into another period of uncertainty? And then perhaps, Richard and I will focus the conversation and try and summarise it as best as we can at the end as we move through.
And we're looking at it through a joined-up Brookbanks lens, aren't we, Lee? It's looking at planning, infrastructure, the cost side, procurement, utilities, highways, drainage, all these important facets. Policy change only matters if it changes what actually happens on the ground.
Absolutely. So yeah, today's focus. It's planning, policy, affordable housing, infrastructure funding, mortgage confidence, public investment, local authority appetite. These are all moving pieces along with the politics that follows. Yesterday's announcement from Andy Burnham, his speech, there's a very clear attempt there to set out a different tone. Hopefully we've all caught up with that on the webinar here, but to summarise, more regional, more interventionist sort of approach, much more delivery led, focus on local power, living standards, council, house building, and public service reform. So a hell of a lot to go at here. It doesn't automatically mean bad news for developers. I think we've sort of ruminated on this a little bit, Richard, with the time that's allowed, and we do think there are parts of this which actually could be positive. It does mean developers, I think, though, need to think very carefully about how schemes are positioned right now. And it's looking at the solution to be in a stronger place than you perhaps thought you were or needed to be, only a few days ago.
Yeah, and then that's the key point, Lee. It's not going to be enough to say a scheme is policy compliant. Developers will need to show how schemes support wider delivery. Homes, infrastructure, jobs, regeneration, resilience, and value for the local area all become part of the same conversation that we're all going to have with local authorities.
Superb, absolutely right. So let's spend a bit of time with leadership change, if we can, and spend a couple of minutes here. So this slide is capturing the first key point, really. So leadership change, it does generate uncertainty. We've all been here before, but it does create opportunity, and I think that's sort of where we, sort of curl a smile from the opportunity that starts to be in front of us. I suppose markets clearly don't like uncertainty, and developers don't like not knowing where policy will land. But there's always that grey area that you need to sit in until the clarity comes. But I suppose political change creates windows, and we need to be live to that. So new leaders will want momentum. Andy Burnham clearly is going to want some momentum here, and a 3-year countdown from this point, really, to enact that. So he's going to try and achieve early wins, as we see it, and prove that delivery works. So assuming he's going to become Prime Minister, and I think it's maybe 21 days away at its earliest, so not too long at all. My read is that we'll see a push towards more regional decision making based on his speech yesterday, more viability at the forefront and visible delivery. So the number 10 North language that he expressed, I think it starts as a symbolic gesture, but it will move into the practical. It signals that power is going to move closer to regions and local leaders. So for developers, what does that mean? Well, again, we think it's national policy will still matter, but local political economy may start to matter even more. Considering postcodes, therefore, maybe more prominently than we have in the past. So who wants the growth? Which combined authorities need the housing delivery the most? Which councils need that regeneration? Where can development unlock infrastructure? Those questions, I guess, become just as important as the planning policy wording itself. It's now a who wants this most, who needs this most mentality, perhaps across the country.
And from a Brookbanks point of view, that is where early strategic advice really matters and makes the difference. And we're all aware a site is not just a red line on a plan. It sits inside a wider infrastructure network, a planning environment, a cost plan, a delivery program, and a political context. So all, again, constraints and features at play there.
Yeah, very much so. Let's move on to why this matters for developers. So simply put, it matters because development sits at the intersection of policy, housing policy, of consumer confidence, infrastructure, cost and viability. If the government wants housing growth, and Andy Burnham's certainly pushing for that is a fundamental positive for all of us in the industry to take forward. If it wants local sort of council-based house building, affordability measures and buyer support, that can stimulate the market in wider terms. If it wants infrastructure-led regeneration, then again, that in itself can unlock sites if the infrastructure is being delivered early. I suppose the detail remains unclear, and the funding for all of these agenda items, could potentially move the wrong way or cause some hesitation. That is something we need to be mindful of. So developers, I think, understandably won't run headlong into this. And there are perhaps two mistakes that we've thought about that developers ought to be ensuring they avoid. So the first one is to probably freeze now and wait for perfect certainty, whilst it might be attractive to see what the funding mechanisms will be, how much Andy Burnham might shift from the Labour manifesto agenda is yet to be seen. But I think doing absolutely nothing is perhaps not the right move. Perfect certainty doesn't really exist. It never sort of lands on our doorstep. So perhaps don't just down tools completely. The second mistake perhaps is to carry on as though nothing's changed. So I think doing what you did last week, a month ago, in the new climate with what's likely going to be happening through July, might not be the smartest play either. Your review of sites of risk, of evidence of infrastructure, that might not sort of exactly be where it needs to be from your work a few weeks or months ago as well. So I think something in the middle, reacting to the news as best as possible is probably the best play at the moment.
And that review, Lee, really needs to be very broad, doesn't it, of sites. So it's not just a planning review. It's got to cover technical, commercial, and really at the crux, it's got to be deliverability led. Everything needs testing very early on to flush out those viable sites.
Yeah, absolutely. On that backdrop then, Richard, if you want to take us through, start with policy signals to watch, that'll be a handy thing.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks for your comments through that section. So looking at policy signals to watch, the important phrase there is, what are the signals to watch? We're not dealing with confirmed policy yet, but there's some areas where we are expecting a bit of movement. So the first one, stamp duty is one, and affordability is another. Planning reform is clearly going to remain live. And infrastructure investment is the one I would put right at the centre of the conversations that are probably happening behind the scenes at the moment. The political direction seems to be about delivery. And that usually means governments are looking for levers they can pull quickly to accelerate that delivery. Some of those levers are going to stimulate demand, things like stamp duty and buyer support. Some of those levers will increase supply, like planning reform. We have other levers as well to lock stalled schemes, infrastructure funding arrangements, public sector delivery, or stronger local accountability are all going to help. The challenge for developers is that these levers don't all pull in the same direction, and they don't all pull at the same time. Yeah. A demand stimulus without supply, will no doubt increase prices. And a planning push for that infrastructure funding can create local resistance as well. So infrastructure investment without clear prioritisation can take years to filter through, as we've seen in previous governments and in previous leadership regimes. So the practical point is developers should not just watch the headline announcements. We really need to get behind the scenes and understand the delivery mechanisms behind it all and how they're working.
I think that's where our clients, all clients, really need clear advice. For me, I suppose a policy announcement can sound positive. The real question behind it is whether it improves the site's position, buyer confidence. Does it reduce risk or change the timing of delivery?
Yeah, very, very true. But again, sort of moving on to a deeper dive into some of those levers. So returning to stamp duty, it's always politically very attractive because it's visible, it's understandable, everyone knows about it and what it is and how it works. If that threshold shifts, or if there's a temporary incentive, you can create that short-term urgency in the market. That can help reservations, buyer confidence and transaction flow. But again, coupled with that, there are risks. Temporary incentives can create spikes and troughs in that demand. They can pull demand forward rather than create new demand. And if the supply doesn't respond quickly, you risk that price inflation rather than improved affordability. So from a developer perspective, the useful thing is not just whether stamp duty changes, it's who that change is aimed at. Is it first-time buyers, people who are looking to downsize, people looking to move up and increase size of home, new build only, regional markets. If the support is targeted, it could influence product mix, phasing, sales strategy, and viability assumptions. So as we sit here today, our advice would be, do not just assume a stamp duty change helps every site equally. We've got to be aware of the buyer profile and the absorption assumptions as well.
Yeah, from our perspective here at Brookbanks, that flows straight into the land cost and commercial advice. Stronger sales rate can absolutely help, but if it's short-lived or policy-driven, then you've got to be careful not to overbake that into land value, cost recovery, or I suppose program assumptions as well, Rich.
Yeah, that's very truly. So next, quick look at Help to Buy, and again, it's the rumours around a possible reintroduction. So Help to Buy or something similar would probably have a more direct impact on new build demand. If reintroduced, it could support first-time buyers, improve that absorption rates, and give house builders more confidence on the entry-level product, the smaller sort of 2-3 bed size dwellings. But again, the detail really does matter. So the previous Help to Buy model was powerful, but it wasn't without criticism when it was rolled out. So any new version needs to be more targeted. Again, we're expecting it might have more regional caps, income limits, more affordability conditions. Other bits like energy requirements and restrictions around the product type, we think will probably start to come into play in that lever. For developers, again, the immediate question is which sites are going to benefit. Large volume sites with entry-level stocks may respond to that quite quickly. Higher value schemes might see less benefit at the present time. Strategic sites, again, may benefit if the policy helps demonstrate stronger delivery rates, but again, with something yet to be seen. But there is another point. If demand support does come back, there may also be pressure on delivery timescales. The government will not want to stimulate demand and then see slow build out or infrastructure delays. So that means technical and commercial delivery becomes more important, not less.
Yeah, it's another one there, Rich, that swings back to Brookbanks, and I suppose the key emphasis we will need to make, and perhaps in different guises or always have, but the policy supports buyers, but the site cannot necessarily connect, to drainage, power utilities, highways, public transport, infrastructure. The policy doesn't deliver homes. The site itself, its position, the physical nature of it is where the homes, literally lie. So I suppose our role continues to be to help clients work out what is actually genuinely real world deliverable, and what needs solving before that becomes a blocker.
Yeah, that's right. So on to again another bit on planning and infrastructure, possibly a most important and interesting slide from my perspective with my background in the delivery world. So leadership changes often bring renewed planning reform, and we all know that, we've all seen it happen before. But planning reform on its own does not deliver the development. The issue is the whole chain. It's the allocation, the consent, it's the infrastructure process, technical approvals, utilities, discharging of planning conditions, going through procurement, and then obviously into build. We're already seeing that infrastructure is becoming central to planning risk now. A lot of local authorities are bringing that really to the forefront of what's important to them. Other bits: flood risk, drainage, nutrient neutrality hasn't gone away, water capacity, wastewater, grid connection. It could go on really, but at the end there's many things that do decide whether a site can move. A more delivery-led government may put more pressure on local authorities to support housing and growth. Again, we don't know yet. That could help. It may also put more pressure on developers to prove infrastructure readiness earlier on in the planning process to obviously show the site is viable and should be taken forward. So the schemes that that will do well, they're likely to be ones that can answer three questions clearly. Can it be planned? Can it be serviced? And can it be delivered? And if the answer is weak on any of those, the politics alone are not going to save the scheme.
Spot on, and I suppose circling back to us really, or to be frank, any consultant supporting clients in these times, it's not about producing separate standalone reports that don't really speak to each other, or the scheme they refer to. We've got to be firmly in the world of helping clients understand whether sites are real, genuinely real beyond the planning journey, deliverable opportunities, again, real world buildable. Does it all happen as we need it to, as the client needs it to, or whether they're carrying sort of hidden planning risk, infrastructure cost or program risk. So separating out sort of theory process versus the real, making sure that the advice is squarely sort of based in the real delivery of it. So we'll just spend a couple of minutes now on interest rates and market expectations. And I'll take you through this one. So I suppose as I've been looking at this last few days, interest rates are probably the area where I'm most careful about making predictions. Quite a crystal ball moment for all. Government does not directly control mortgage rates, but of course it does influence the market confidence. So fiscal credibility, inflation expectations, and investor confidence all feed into the cost of borrowing. So that's why any commitment to fiscal discipline really does matter. The market is going to welcome new ambition, of course, but it's going to test whether that ambition is credible. So for developers, this matters in three key places really. So the first, purchaser affordability. So mortgage rates stay higher for longer, buyers are going to remain cautious. We've seen this time and time again. Secondly, development finance. So debt costs can make marginal schemes unviable very quickly. So it goes back to that sort of real world deliverability point we've been making earlier. And thirdly, land and construction. So if funding costs, build costs and sales rates change, then land assumptions invariably, of course, need to change alongside those. So our advice today is not to try and guess the exact rate path. It's going to be stress test, absolutely. You should be doing that. But again, look at sales values, build costs, finance costs, abnormals, affordable housing, infrastructure triggers, procurement strategy and phasing. Consider those in the round, not in isolation. These themes that survive all of the stress tests are the ones that can move forward with confidence.
And Lee, that stress test does need a lot of technical input, doesn't it? Viability is not just a spreadsheet exercise at the end of the day. It depends on what has to be built, when it has to be built, how it connects, what approvals are needed, and where those important abnormal risks sit.
Yeah, 100%. So let's check in on developer sentiment now. So what we are seeing in the market is cautious optimism, I'd say. Very careful phrase, that, cautious optimism. So there's clearly still an appetite, and there's still capital, and of course there's still the need for housing. There is also a lot of reevaluation going on and will continue to go on. So developers are asking, look, should we push this site now, wait for the policy clarity, revisit the housing mix, reopen viability, strengthen the technical case? All of these questions swirling around. My view is that the best developers will not sit still. We mentioned this earlier, of course. So they're going to use this period to sharpen their position as best as they can. For us, that means that they're going to be aware and knowing which sites are policy aligned, which need infrastructure intervention, which have avoidable technical weakness. and which may benefit from a change in buyer support or public investment. And I guess tied within all that is an important relationship point, which if more power moves to regional opportunity, then relationships with local authorities, combined authorities, infrastructure providers, and stat consultees becomes even more important. The centralized version of these, if dissipate to regional, creates relationship opportunities that we in this industry may not have needed to fully exploit before. So developers should be building confidence before applications land, and perhaps not trying to recover it after the fact.
And that's particularly true again on the technical matters. If you leave the infrastructure, the engineering, and the cost issues as a bit of an afterthought, they're likely going to become objections. Redesigns will be needed, and you'll start to see the commercial ripples come down the track and impact your viability. So on the flip side, if you deal with them early, you can paint them into the delivery story and see them as a benefit to the scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more slides to go, so we'll sort of get through these quickly and wrap up. If anybody does need to leave on the half hour, you're very welcome to. The session is being recorded, and we can share this to all attendees after the fact. But if you're able to stick with us for another couple of minutes, then we'll be grateful. So what developers should do now? So I suppose this is leaning into the practical bit. First, track policy announcements, but don't wait passively. Second, refresh your viability models. Don't just update the headline numbers. Look properly, forensically at your infrastructure, your phasing, abnormal costs and delivery risk. Third, reassess your pipeline timing. So some sites might need to move quicker if there's a policy window. Others might need stronger evidence before they are passed. Fourth, strengthen relationships with local authorities, infrastructure providers, and key consultees. Again, get ahead of the pack and build those regional relationships. And fifth, prepare to act quickly when the confidence returns. So again, get everything in the best possible shape ahead of time. But I'll probably add one more point to the slide. Strengthen public interest in the case for your site. So be clear on what the scheme actually does. Does it deliver homes? Does it unlock infrastructure, support regeneration? Does it help a council meet its housing need, improve resilience? Does it support local services? So again, get your planning narrative in a really good shape to help your delivery through.
And that public interest case, it does need evidence behind it, doesn't it, Lee? It needs that credible planning advice, the engineering advice, the clever infrastructure thinking to get the most out of something, the cost planning, the transport and environmental impact. And when you've got all that, that's what gives confidence to the local authorities, the clients, the funders, and the delivery partners that you're actually going to make it happen.
Absolutely.
So again, Brookbanks' perspective, what's our take on things? Our perspective is that this change, and there likely will be some changes, will create opportunity, but only where developers are prepared. So again, I think Lee's touching about the early movers benefit most when they've done the groundwork beforehand and are ready to go. So that means proper technical due diligence, early thinking on infrastructure and how that's going to work, a clear planning strategy, realistic cost advice, and having that commercial awareness and a credible view on the site's viability are really key. We're seeing more and more situations these days where technical evidence is not just supporting the planning application, it's shaping the whole strategy for a development. Drainage strategies may influence developable areas, utilities, supply and things may influence the phasing, how you can bring site forward. The highways constraints may influence access strategy and land assembly. And you've got the things, again, flood risk, that's going to impact your layout. Big one, as ever, ground conditions. It may influence your approach to cost and programme. And your cost and commercial advice may influence whether the scheme can actually proceed at all. So the technical and commercial work it's not just a bolt-on. It's got to be part of the development decision making from the very outset. Lee, I think earlier the better for a lot of this work.
Yeah, that's our strength here, perhaps, isn't it? Mentioned it before. Disconnected reports that they're not overly helpful. To be perfectly frank, it's joined up advice that sets the table on risk, opportunity, cost, program, consent, and deliverability. So, in this political environment that we find ourselves in now, the joined up advice is even more valuable. So, if government is now going to start to talk more and evidence and demonstrate that they're keen on deliverability, on delivery, you've got to show it. Our clients need to know what it is they can actually deliver at this point. So we're now on the summary. So we've made it through. Thank you everybody for sticking with us. So to summarise on my side first. So we've got the political transition is going to influence confidence, and again, the month we're about to go in is extremely momentous for the country in terms of what happens next. Policy changes may come around stamp duty, as we see it, affordability, housing delivery, planning, and infrastructure. Interest rates and fiscal credibility remain central to viability. Developers, we feel in conversations we've had over the last few days that they're ready to move, but are going to want that clarity and confidence before full commitment. And right now is the time to position schemes properly and get them in good shape.
Yeah, I fully agree with all of that, Lee. From my side, the practical message is do the work early, as early as possible in the process. The sites that we best placed are those with that clear planning case, the strong evidence background around infrastructure and delivery of that, having realistic cost advice, a really credible and strong viability case, and a convincing delivery story that shows how you're going to make it work. The political direction of travel does appear to favour growth at the moment. So in housing and both on a regional sense. That doesn't mean that every site is going to get easier. It's going to mean the strongest, best evidenced and best positioned sites are likely to move first.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll close up now. Just final thoughts from us both. So for me, don't wait for perfect certainty. We have enough signals now, I think. Let's use them. Review your sites, no matter scale and status. Strengthen your evidence for those sites. Understand your local political context. Do revisit your viability. I think we've made that point a number of times today. It's extremely important, and get infrastructure and cost risks on the table early. All of that is going to be extremely helpful to you. When policy clarity does come, you're in a much more stable position to move.
Yeah, and keep speaking to your advisors again as early as possible. That best value we keep talking about only comes when the planning, the engineering, the infrastructure, the cost, the delivery advice shape the strategy before those real big decisions are locked in with your site.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Super. Okay, that brings us to a close. We're a few minutes over. I think most people managed to hang around, which is lovely. What that has done, though, is probably close the Q&A window. So, as I say, a recording of this session and contact details will be provided. So if there's anything you'd like to ask or discuss after the fact, then again, Richard and I, all of our team at Brookbanks will be available for discussion as and when you're ready. Richard, thank you very much for joining me today. Very insightful as always, sir. Nice to catch up with you.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Okay, everyone's welcome to leave now, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for joining.